The view of a few was a term that I said to somebody this week when I was making a decision and I was starting to make the decision based on other people's views, opinions. And when I was making the decision, I was saying to somebody, I feel like we should go in this direction because of the view. And then I realized of a few, there weren't that many people actually. So I was going in a completely different direction just because a couple of people had said to me they would prefer that. And then I just suddenly thought for a moment, how often do we do this where we make decisions based on the view of a few? And that's what I want to talk about in today's episode because I see this happening in our community and to myself too, where I remember in the very beginning days of being an artist, even that in art school, the preferred medium was oil paint. And it was the view of a few, it was a view of my lecturer at the time and a few others that much preferred oil. And I didn't want to use oil, and I did because of the view of a few. And I'm glad that I did, because it was trial and error and it was nice to explore oils. And I like oils, don't get me wrong, but I really wanted to work with inks. I liked the fluidity and the spontaneity of inks, how they have their own mind. And I like working with a material. In fact, just saying this out loud now, I've just realized something about myself as a creative. I really like to work with materials that kind of take on their own life. So that's definitely why I'm using stone at the moment. So I'm carving with stone because it has its own life. I have an idea of how I want it to go, but the stone has its own idea. And I really like that about inks, how you apply inks, but they kind of take on their own life. They've got their own life. And I really love that. That's just something I've just learned about myself. There we go. I need to write that down on a post-it note. But going back to the conversation is this view of a few. Oh my gosh, we have to remember this because what I find is sometimes we will go down a different pathway or we will convince ourselves that our art isn't going to sell or what we have is too expensive because of the view of a few. And it might be one or two people that have said to you recently, wow, this is really expensive. I can't afford your artwork. And that then starts to get into your head. I'm expensive. I should reduce my prices. I am not going to sell at this price. And so um, the other is true of that sometimes if we go down a pathway and someone says to us, that isn't going to work. I won't take your artwork. I can't sell your artwork. We can really emphasize this as being the future and the pathway of, okay, my artwork doesn't sell. It won't sell. Galleries aren't going to take my artwork. And all of a sudden we can kind of make this the viewpoint of everybody. We assume everyone is going to think this of us when actually it's just the view of a few. And I really am being aware of this recently, more aware because I want to make decisions because of me and because of what feels right. And I want you to take this on board as well and look back maybe at times in your life that you've made decisions based on the view of a few and it doesn't represent the whole world and society. And so I want you to really think about that going forwards when you make decisions too. Is this your view or is this something you're doing because you think other people think it's right or wrong? And so being aware of that and know that if it is just a few people, um, that's just their opinion. And some people are wrong. There was an article I was reading the other day saying that I think it was Trinny Woodhull. I don't know if I've got her name correct, but she's a UK kind of celebrity. And she was always told that her makeup line would never work. And she's now a multi-millionaire. Like her business generates millions and millions and millions every year. And she was told many times that it wouldn't work. It was the view of a few. And there'll be so many people who have opinions on what you should do, what you shouldn't do, whether your art will sell, whether you're good enough, whether you should do this, whether this will work. And it's just their opinion. And so remember that, the view of a few. We are going to be working on Best Year Yet together very soon in January, where we really start to lean into this, our own view. What's our own view? What do we really want? And to take people's opinions on board as we go sailing towards our destination, but knowing that it's just an opinion, it's just a viewpoint. So there we go, Motivational Monday. I'll see you next week, my friends. Let me know, have you had that recently where you've had a few people say something to you and now you've made it this big thing, like, okay, so I can't do that now? Let me know. I'd love to know. Take care. Bye-bye.